What is the best anime of 2023? In my opinion, it's Frieren. That's pretty obvious. The animation was beyond stellar at points. The story itself is probably one of the most interesting premises I've heard from a fantasy story. And the fact that they're able to juggle two different timelines going on simultaneously, as well as balancing sort of an overarching plot and a journey through these different cities and towns and countrysides, all of it accumulates to make this amazing show that you shouldn't miss. If you haven't watched it yet, please start watching Frieren. Frieren is a must-see. It gets a serious stamp of approval. It is still airing too, which is fantastic right now. And it's just continuing to prove to be one of the best shows I've seen. Now, speaking of other shows that I think deserve recognition, Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2 is the popular show of the season. There isn't a single person that has watched anime that hasn't heard of Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2. Specifically because they go into the Shibuya incident arc, which for a lot of manga readers is very infamous for a good amount of reasons. And finally, the anime onlys now know our pain. Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2 not only crushed it with its animation, but in terms of its writing. Because this is what elevates Jujutsu Kaisen, in my opinion, to becoming one of the great standouts of recent anime and recent manga, is this arc. Because from this point on, you haven't had an arc that has such drastically changed the story that isn't the finale. This is like an arc in the middle of an overarching story that they're trying to tell, that Gege is trying to tell. But here, everything that you know and everything that is established within Jujutsu Kaisen has basically been turned on its head. All the things that you are familiar with Gojo's power, with the strength of Jujutsu sorcerers, and how, yes, they may face against curses that could kill them. You didn't really see that happen too much. It's really only the bystanders that really get mutilated or killed in these really extreme, grotesque ways. Well, the Shibuya incident's like, what if we have all that plot armor and remove it for everyone? And that's what ends up happening, because the plot armor is Goju Satoru, and my goodness, once he's taken out of the picture, everything falls apart. And just from that angle, from taking a show that is very much traditional within its storytelling, where it's very much, oh, Jujutsu sorcerers are going away exercising all these curses, nothing bad could happen, maybe they'll face against like the big bosses and maybe they'll die. No, this is like everything falls apart at one point in time. And from this point on, the story will never be the same. And you definitely feel that within the manga. At least the parts I have read. So, Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2, you probably already heard of it, but it is one of the best of this season. In my opinion, just not as good as Frieren, because from a storytelling perspective, from a fantasy writing perspective, I prefer that. Personally, that's just me. Now, Undead Unluck is very similar to My Hero Academia from its art style, in my opinion. It is very, I guess, shonen looking with its animation, with just the character designs just remind me of, oh, this could be a character in My Hero Academia. I know that may offend people because Undead Unluck is actually good compared to My Hero, but in my opinion, this show is, it's the, I guess this is when animation takes precedence over logic and deep thinking. Like, there's not much to think about. Like, sure, there are moments that really pressure you to think beyond, like, just how the world functions and what are the dynamics of these people who are being gifted powers, right? But it's by no means a Frieren or a Jujutsu Kaisen where you have to think more about the morality of everything. This is very much we'll see how this goes from this point forward. And you can't blame it for that. It's just a fun show. And the animation's great. And I think, in my opinion, the best example of sound design is from Undead Unluck this season. So if you haven't seen it, Undead Unluck, it is really good. And if you just want a great time where you can just sit back and relax and not like be, I guess, fully depressed like in Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2 or sobbing your eyes out with Frieren, this is like a nice, I guess, fun anime in comparison. Eminence in Shadow Season 2 is also one of those shows where it's just pure fun. But why I love this show to death is because it takes itself too seriously in a way that makes it fun. Because by taking itself so seriously, it also knows to make fun of that fact. So you have a lot of different fight scenes going on, lots of exposition, sort of like what people would consider lazy world building, where it's not a natural progression. It's just, information dump, information dump, information dump. But somehow they do it in a way with comedy and great action that sells it for you. And the more I watch Eminence in Shadow, the more I end up falling in love with this show because it's insane. And they know it wants to be insane. And it takes itself seriously way too much. But they do it in a way where by taking itself too seriously, they inherently make it not serious at all. So, Eminence in Shadow Season 2 and Undead Unluck are the two for me that are really just, they scream fun of fall anime 2022 or 2023. Is they really are the ones where you can turn off your brain and really just have a good time. Now, Zom 100 would sort of be in the same vein as Eminence in Shadow and Undead Unluck, where it's kind of more fun, kind of just, I guess, wishful escapism, where you can just turn off your brain after like a long day at work and just enjoy it. But Zom 100 also has a lot of poignant moments, specifically with these last 3 episodes. Now, did this show come out in the summer? Yes. Why am I covering it now? Well, what happened was there were some production issues with the studio. So they decided to release the last 3 episodes that they ended up delaying to Christmas. And they killed it. I mean, this is probably some of the best animation I have seen from the season. It is in Zom 100. And I love the premise too. The premise is very unique to a zombie apocalypse setting, where it's like, imagine taking this very morbid reality and putting a fun comedic spin on it. And I don't know, just something about that makes me so happy while watching the show. Just like, imagine living in a world where instead of being depressed and crying and waiting for your eventual demise or being turned into a zombie, you embrace it and try and do as many things as you can and live a very fulfilling life before turning into a zombie. And I think that's amazing. Now, Spy Family, also very popular anime. It is up there with Jujutsu Kaisen in terms of its notoriety. If you have watched any amount of anime, you've heard of Spy Family. It is one of the most popular shows. And there's a good reason for that. Now, Spy Family, I won't spend too much time on this because I've talked about it before, but Spy Family has always proven itself as one of the best shows I have seen. It consistently delivers with its comedy, with its action, and just overall wholesome nature. Like, every time I watch a Spy Family episode, I always get a smile on my face, and I think that's what makes this show so special. Now, I would be wrong to say that this show is bad by any means, because it's not. But I am disappointed, because out of all of the romance shows I have seen, why is it that the 100 Girlfriends who really, 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 really love you turns out to be one of the best shows out of the lot of romance shows we have? And I really do mean that, because this show does something that a lot of romance shows fail at, and it's the traditional romance shows that you think would succeed. Somehow 100 Girlfriends actually does a great job of creating memorable relationships with the characters, actually has characters getting together that deserve to belong with each other, and has a great assortment of humor and I guess fan service, but we don't talk about that. And despite all this, a lot of romance anime, although there are very few that I hold in high regard, they at least should be better than this, right? But they're not. And so, as I kept watching, I kept dying inside because of the amount of times that I just thought, why this show? Why is this show good? Why? Why can't Toradora be good? Why can't quintessential quintuplets? Why can't we never learn? Why does it have to be this show that is good? But hey, good job. You did great. You made a great romance show that isn't bad. And I'm kind of sad that I said that. But yeah, that's my thoughts. Dr. Stone New World is probably one of those shows where I almost put it on hold. There were just a lot of great shows at this season, and I'm trying to keep up with all of them. And I do love Dr. Stone. I love the premise. I love the art style. It's very unique, and I love Senku as a character. Senku is a mad scientist who wants to bring about a new age in the world, or a new age in this stone world, I should say, by bringing back technology and sort of speed running all these inventions. And New World definitely continues that trend, but this time it introduces the petrification device for the first time. And although the show goes back and forth on what this petrification device is, what it can do, by the end it turns out to be one of the most, I guess, engaging shows I have ever seen. And the cliffhanger for the last episode really hypes me up for what's to come for Dr. Stone. And the way it ends is something that I wanted for the longest time to happen. After they introduced this idea of the petrification device and what it does and what it can lead to, they follow through on it. And it just goes to show that Dr. Stone will always deliver. And it is one of the shows too that I will turn on, and every time I watch an episode, I know it's going to be great. Sometimes it does get slow though, but it's all set up for a big payoff near the end, especially New World. So Shangri-La Frontier is the big standout for me. It is the one that isn't a continuation of something that we've seen before, but it also is something that we've seen before. It is SAO redone, but better. And I think it has to be in part due to the amazing opening. It is probably one of my favorite openings of the season. Just talking about MMORPG anime, there's not that many that are great, but there are some that are. And with Shangri-La Frontier, it falls into that camp where it's not one of those boring ones, it's not one of those generic ones, it is one that is the top of the pile. And although I am hesitant to call it an isekai, even though it technically counts, it is one of the most fun I've had with an MMORPG show. And I'll get to a show later, I'll talk about it, but in terms of not being generic, it does its job. And every time I watch it, I just get a smile on my face. So, yeah. Now, speaking of openings, this show I almost skipped entirely. The Apothecary Diaries is a show that I watched one time after sitting down and putting myself into mood. I told myself, I'm going to watch the first episode and then I'm going to be done and over with it. Then I caught up to episode 12 in one day. So this show proves to be, I guess, the pinnacle of what happens when anime explores other cultures and different stories in different cultures. One of my personal favorites from last season was Undead Murder Farce. And that was an amazing show. I loved that show to death because it explored, imagine taking these Japanese characters and putting them into Europe, with all these famous figures, and I thought that was such an interesting premise. And the Apothecary Diaries doesn't do that. They don't have any Japanese characters because it's all based in China. And the more I watched the show, I fell in love with not only our main lead here, but the opening is one of the best, on par with Shangri-La Frontier of the season. And the more I just kept watching, the more I loved the idea of just having just a different setting now and then, and a different type of story, and I appreciated it for that. Ragna Crimson is another show too, and it was teetering on the line of being dropped by me. It was teetering on that line after that first episode because, I'm gonna be honest, garbage first episode. It took a while to finally kick in, and it was only until I think the last 10 minutes where something interesting actually happened and hooked me into the show. But I'm glad it's here, and the way the story unfolded, I am actually really happy with the way it's going, because this is how you do a revenge story, in my opinion. Because when you have such rageful characters, it is easy to fall into the trap where they become so irredeemable that you don't want to keep watching them. And we'll get to that later on shows that I dropped this season, because there are a lot of revenge shows that didn't do it for me. The reason why Ragna Crimson was still engaging to me and why I kept watching it is because Ragna is an interesting character, and he's also very likable. And although he's very vengeful, he's very rageful against the dragons and the dragon monarchs, what I love about him is that he's very much a protector. He wants to kill and murder everyone to prevent the people around him, the people close to him, from dying. And it's a very simple premise of just revenge, but what really helps nail this show down is revenge for the sake of protecting others. And I can get behind that. I can get behind someone, going on a huge killing spree and murdering all these evil dragons to protect the ones he cares about the most. And that wraps up, I guess, the winners of this season. It totals around 11 total shows that I think are definitely worth your time. So if you're sort of in a hurry and you don't have anything to watch in between watching Solo Leveling, which, banger first episode, by the way, it's just going to take forever to get to episode 2. I hate waiting weekly. You can watch these shows if you haven't already. I think these shows are beautiful examples of anime done extremely well. They've ranged from a plethora of different genres, different types of storytelling, and different types of worlds too. From the far, far future to the distant past, you have everything you need in these shows. And I can't hate it. It's great. Now, I'd like to jump into shows that I put on hold. Shows that I want to get back into, that I think deserve my time, but I just didn't have enough. And the shows that I put above it were shows I completed that I thought were the best of the season. So these are by no means shows that I have dropped, that I don't want to continue watching. It's just shows that I feel didn't do it for me to keep watching during the season, but whenever there's a slow period during this season, this winter season, or next season, I will definitely return to it. Now, starting off, I did call this the anime of the season. It's the Yuzuki family's 4 sons, and I did get very sentimental when talking about this earlier in my earlier initial thoughts video. But as I kept watching, I don't know what it was. Maybe I was watching it late and I passed out. I couldn't get back into it. And it was nothing against the show. I loved the show. It's just a lot of the shows I was watching, I guess I kept wanting to rewatch it and keep listening to the great openings of the seasons. So I ended up just ignoring it completely and just kept going from there. So as much as I love the Yuzuki family's 4 sons, I do not think it's not the best anime of the season anymore, in my opinion. Just because I put it on hold, but it's by no means bad. So if you want to check this one out, I would recommend it. If you want sort of a more slow, I guess a slow burn emotional show compared to the ones this season. Now, a playthrough of a certain dude's VRMMO life is another MMORPG anime done this season. Now, the first one we talked about, it was, of course, Shangri-La Frontier. This one isn't as good, that's why it's here. It is very generic, but it's also a very safe show. If you want to watch just a show just to be entertained, this will do the job for you. It doesn't do anything amazing, but by doing so, it doesn't do anything terribly. And I guess that's where I stand on it. It's, I guess, the definition of mid. There are some fun moments, there are some great moments I did enjoy, but for the most part, it's kind of just an air show for me. So hopefully I'll get back to it soon, and maybe it'll turn itself around. Now, Shy is better My Hero Academia, because imagine Bocchi the Rock, or Bocchi from Bocchi the Rock, playing a superhero. That's Shy here. And the first episode was great because it really cemented what the show was about. It's about this girl who's shy, and she has a lot of problems dealing with the spotlight, specifically when you're living in a world where superheroes have their own brands and they represent the countries that they were born in. And Shy is a representative of Japan, and there's a lot of pressure, a lot of bad things happen, and she does get criticized by the online mob, and it does a number to her. But through her experiences, through her passion to help save people, she ends up growing out of it and becoming less shy and becoming more confident within herself. And you can't hate that. That's a great idea. And the opening is not bad by any means. It is a great premise. And yeah, I just think this show's great. I just need to get back into it. It's just one of those shows that takes a little bit of time. Dead Mount Death Play Season 2 is a continuation of, I guess, Season 1. Or I guess it's less Season 2 and more of the second core. It is probably the edgiest show this season, and I mean that in the best way possible. It has everything to do with necromancy to sort of a skeleton boss that gets reincarnated, and it has to deal with burning of people alive in bodies and very morbid things, murder. Even billiards, they have billiards. That's how you know how morbid it is. It has billiards, and you know, the mafia or gang or whatever is running the city holds their bases in this billiards room, so this bar. So overall, not a bad show. All I would say is I want to get back into it. I know some interesting things happen going forward based on what I've been told. Just need to find time and place. It is very much you have to be in the mood to watch this show, and yeah, I'll get back into it. Faraway Paladin is kind of along the same lines. This is Season 2, The Lord of the Rust Mounds. It is a great fantasy show. It is definitely above average. It does a lot of things that I enjoy and introduces a lot of things that I want to see more from different types of stories that help it stray away from being very tropey. Now, I guess the problem with this show is like it doesn't have anything that keeps me extremely engaged like some of the great fantasy shows of this season, and that's why I put it on hold. I definitely got my fill with definitely Frieren and Shangri-La Frontier. So when it came to Faraway Paladin, I kind of just put it on the back burner, and I'll return to it. I enjoyed the first season. Season 2 definitely seems like an upgrade because the animation seems more consistent than Season 1. So yeah, I'm just kind of gonna coast with this show. And like Faraway Paladin, I'm going to be talking about Goblin Slayer Season 2. I almost said Demon Slayer. Why did I say that? Goblin Slayer Season 2. And although it does have that infamous first episode, they almost took that first episode and said, you know what, let's repeat the same scenes that got us in trouble in the first place with Season 2. And that shocked me. I don't really have a say in terms of what happened with the controversy in season 1. My main thing was just, I guess you like put a content warning on that. That's where I stand on it. And and they do with season 2, and I think they did after season 1 as well. But in terms of what Goblin Slayer did in season 1, it just became more boring for me, where you had that crazy hook that's very engaging, because so many insane things happen, especially for anime, and it just goes downhill from there because they don't really reach that same level of shock factor in season 1. Season 2 is a little bit better than the end of season 1 because I wasn't really a big a fan, but like what I said with Faraway Paladin, I got my fill of fantasy stories with this season with 2 of these shows, so I kind of was just like, I'm gonna put this on the back burner. I'll try and get through it, but it's by no means a priority for me. Our dating story, The Experienced You and The Inexperienced Me, is a good romance show. It is not a bad romance show. I was just not feeling it, in my opinion. I was just more hooked on seeing the 100 Girlfriends show, that I just kind of looked at this and was like, I already have my romance show, and this romance show is pretty good, so I'll put this on the back burner and finish it when the romance shows turn to garbage. But yeah, but it's by no means bad. I just kind of was just like, I'll wait. I'm in Love with the Villainess is kind of the same way. I think I just kind of fell off the show because once again, all the great shows this season kept ramping up, and the more I kept wanting to watch those shows, I had less time to finish all these shows. So this was one of the shows that I think wasn't bad by any means. It's definitely a great show. It's just not on par with some of the best, and that's why I kind of put it on the back burner here. Alright, the more I'm looking, a lot of these shows is kind of the same way. They're by no means bad. I'm just going to list them off, so it's kind of just going faster. The Saint's power is omnipotent. Omnipotent. Okay. Great show. Love season 1. Season 1's actually really great. Season 2 is also amazing. Once again, just ran out of time, and I wanted to actually invest more time into watching this show and fully concentrate on it. But when I'm watching all their great shows, unfortunately, it was the one to be put on the back burner. My Daughter Left the Nest and returned an S-ranked adventure. Same way, it's not as great as Saint's Power, but it's still a pretty good show. Very wholesome, I will say, and yeah, just kind of didn't have enough time, so I will return to it eventually. Ron Kamonohashi's Forbidden Deductions is a great mystery show, but it's very episodic and very formulaic, and that's why I think I ultimately put it on hold, because it was getting kind of bland for me, and I wanted to return to it when I was in better spirits. Dark Gathering just took a while to get me back into the show, especially after having a great episode 12, so I kind of just put it on hold. But it's a great horror anime that started way back in, I guess, it was one of the earliest shows, and it's still going on. I believe it started in summer, and it's still ongoing. But yeah, it's great premise. I think the characters' designs are very unique, and the art style is very unique. And it's the only horror, I guess, related show, aside from Dead Mountain Death Play, of the season. And I can't hate it for that. I want to return to it, but it's just going to take me some time. Rurouni Kenshin is also along the same lines as a lot of these other shows I put on hold. I think I just got to the end of the big arc, and there's a bunch of mini arcs before they go into the next one. That's what I've been told. So for me, I'm like, this is the perfect breakaway point where I can sort of just take a step back and then return to it at a later date. So yeah, those are my 12 shows that I put on hold. Yes, you heard me right. There are 12 shows I put on hold. None of them by any means are bad. I'd say the worst out of the bunch is probably the playthrough one, the VR one, and even then it's not bad. It's just generic. So, and last but not least, it's already been a long video, I understand, but we have to talk about the losers of 2023. And oh boy, there are a lot. Starting with the one that I had the most hope for, which is the Kingdoms of Ruin. I dropped that immediately. It was so tragic what happened to such a great premise. Imagine a revenge story where you bring back the idea of rescuing your loved one from the brink of death, and you two traversing this world where your kind has basically been wiped out. And you just turn it into, nope, we're gonna murder everyone, and we're gonna resurrect the one character that is not only the most annoying, but the most generic and very tropey character. And once it became that generic, I want to murder everyone, I don't care about anyone else, I kind of just checked out. I was like, nope. So, Berserk of Gluttony isn't as offensive as Kingdoms of Ruin, but it is very generic, and I could not sit myself down to watch it. There was nothing special about it, and I think that's what ultimately paid the price for the show. Is just, it never stood out for me as something great. I'm giving the Disgraced Noble Lady I Rescued a crash course in naughtiness. It's a show that is one of the long titles, which is really funny. I always find long titles funny. But it was, once again, very generic. I was expecting something more from the show, even from the title. But yeah, it just turned out to be nothing. And that's why I ended up putting it down. Firefighter Daigo is the longest lasting one out of this list so far. It is the one that I had the most hope for, and it did start off great. And then it started dragging a little bit, and it was barely noticeable. You can excuse it throughout some of the episodes for maybe budget cuts, but the more time passed, it got worse and worse and worse, and you started noticing it painfully when there were whole scenes of no dialogue taking place, and it was just background sounds and just a plain view of just an empty space. And I'm like, what are we doing here? And my friend and I did research on this. Indomitable and I did research on this. And it turns out that this show doesn't have enough source material for the episode run that it was given. So that's why they're stretching out everything. And that's when I heard that, I was just like, yeah, no. I checked out. I'm like, it's going to get worse from here. Migi and Dali creeps me out. It's the creepiest show this season, and the more I kept watching it, the more I just felt like there was something crawling under my skin. So I noped out there as fast as I could. Yeah, not for me. Attack on Titan. We finally made it to the big one that everyone's probably gonna be upset with me on, but hear me out. I read the manga. I knew it was coming. And right as they announced the big finale to Attack on Titan, and I heard it was exactly like the manga, I told myself I am never watching this thing. It is one of the most disappointing endings to any anime and manga that I have ever I have seen or read, and I stand by that. I don't remember much that happens because it's been a while. But everything that I have been hoping for a great definitive conclusion to the show, it burned out. It went up in a blaze of glory, and I hate it for that. So, Attack on Titan is one of the losers this season because I continue to boycott the ending because it's not great. Demon Lord Retry, generic show. I don't like it. That's pretty much it. It's just generic. The Demon Sword Master of Excalibur Academy. Generic show. I just skipped it because I couldn't get into it. And last but not least, we have A Girl and Her Guard Dog. And if you haven't heard of this already, let me educate you on something. So there's a thing known as age gaps. And usually when both people are above the age of consent, and this is when they first meet each other, is when they're above the age of consent, it's no big deal. It's actually, people find it's whatever. However, when one person is under the age of consent and one person is over the age of consent when this relationship forms, especially a romance show, I have lots of thoughts, and none of them are great. So let me leave it at that. Don't watch the show. If there's any show from the losers that you should never watch, it is A Girl and Her Guard Dog, because fuck that. And so, out of all the losers, there's a total of 9 that I personally think that really dropped the ball this season, and you should definitely just skip. The truth is that the more shows that come out, you're gonna get a lot more great shows going forward. I think we've entered this great period in animation, specifically with anime, where you will never have a season that doesn't have a big hitter, a show that is some of the best examples of what the medium can do, at this current point in time. But what I will say is there will also be an influx of really, really bad shows and really, really generic shows. So it's up to you to make sure that when you're watching all these shows that you pay attention to what shows you want to watch, because there are some that I think you should commit your time to, and others where I feel like you're going to waste your time. And I don't want you to go down that route. So, yeah. So what did you guys think of my list of winners and losers of fall 2020-2023? Why I say 2020-2023? That's weird. Let me know your thoughts below, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. We're going to be talking about winter soon, and oh boy, winter has a lot of great choices to pick from, whether it's Classroom of the Elite, Solo Leveling, and a lot of other great shows. So yeah, I guess that's pretty much it, and thanks for watching, friends. I know this is a pretty long one.